Hi, Bonnie. Nice to see you. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen now. Fantastic. All right. I'll just get a thumbs up that you can see it. Bon, can you? Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. All right, let's get started. Thanks for everyone coming on a Monday night. Hope you're all nice and warm here in Sydney. It's actually really cold and rainy, so nice to be inside and enjoying this webinar. So today I want to talk about, or tonight I'm talking about 5 ways your period is trying to talk to you. So as a lot of you know, I am a herbalist and have a special interest in women's health, hormonal health, all things related to supporting women with their hormones, making them feel fantastic and energized and happy within their body. So this particular masterclass has come about because, as I see it multiple times in clinic, basically my clients are unaware that their period or their cycle is really a vital tool into understanding their health. So we can get so much amazing information about our bodies from our period and from our cycle. Sorry, I'm just going to let people in at the same time. Okay, so basically the period can give us valuable insight into our health, and that's why I like to refer it as our monthly report card. So basically another term that you may have heard me say before is that our period is like our 5th vital sign to health. So these vital signs are like measures that indicate how well your body is functioning, and they can tell us an overall health story about how things are going for your health. So they reflect an overall health status, and our other vital signs that we get are things like our blood pressure, our body temperature, heart rate, and respiratory rate. So our period is one of these amazing vital signs that can give us fantastic information. And we're very lucky because we get, well, ideally we're getting a period every month. So every month we're getting like a little insight into how well our health is going. So knowing your cycle, learning how to read the signs and symptoms is really a wonderful tool to understanding your current health status and keeping you on track with your health goals. So let's talk about some of the things that we can learn from our cycle. So things like debilitating period pain, irregular periods, PMS, mood swings, fatigue, skin breakouts, heavy periods, insomnia, bloating, and tender breasts. All of these things are very common, and I hear them a lot with my beautiful clients in clinic, but they maybe they're common, but they are not normal. So they are definitely giving us insights into what is happening with our hormones. So I like to, use the illustration that hormones or our, hormones are basically texting us or sending us messages through our period. So what are your hormones giving you as a text message? This is like their only way of really communicating, or one of the most amazing ways of them communicating with us is through our period. So what are they saying? That's the interesting thing. And learning how to decipher that text message is really paramount to understanding your hormones and starting your hormonal healing. So like I mentioned, and I say this all the time, you probably hear me like a broken record on Instagram talking about it, but whilst they are common, period pain, PMS, bloating, all of these things, they may be common, they are not normal, and it's not something that you need to put up with and having to deal with every month as a symptom. Definitely trying to tell us what's going on in the body. So believe it or not, our body actually wants to be balanced. We have this amazing thing in our body which is called homeostasis, and essentially our body's been designed to be healthy and to be well. So when we have these symptoms, like, as I mentioned, headaches, pain, hormonal breakouts, tender breast, mood swings, they're all insights or little niggles from our body that things aren't right. So it's really opening up our ears and listening and understanding what these symptoms could be saying about our health. So what are the 5 signs from your period? These are the top 5 signs that I see the most in clinic. There are multiple, many others, but these are the top 5, and that's why I wanted to go into these top 5 today to talk about, what they could be saying about your health. So let's dive in and talk about the first one. So period pain. So this is one of the most common menstrual issues. It affects 93% of high school aged girls. That's a pretty staggering and unfortunate figure when you think about it, 93%. And basically, there are 2 types of period pain. There's primary dysmenorrhea or primary period pain. And this type of period pain starts like from the first few months of you getting your cycle way back when you were 12, 13 or however old. So it's almost like you've always had period pain. All right. And this is what we call primary dysmenorrhea. And oftentimes there's not necessarily an underlying health condition in this one. It's just linked to high prostaglandin levels. And those high prostaglandin levels are pro-inflammatory and they can trigger our uterine muscles to contract. Secondary dysmenorrhea, on the other hand, is when maybe you've never had period pain and then all of a sudden you're starting to get it on a regular basis. So this is definitely saying that there is an underlying condition happening there. So this is definitely, all period pain warrants further investigation, but particularly if it comes on later on in your cycle and you've never had period pain before, you want to be getting this checked out significantly. So a couple of things that our period pain could be telling us about our body is, number 1, endometriosis. Now, this is a very complex hormonal condition that doesn't just involve hormones, and involves the immune system and the gut, the nervous system, but endometriosis is one of the most common conditions that are linked with period pain. All right, and this period pain is very debilitating, and it can also include pain around ovulation as well. So endometriosis is very important that you get that ruled out and you get that checked. Then there's adenomyosis, which is very similar to endometriosis. And essentially, again, it's linked to those hormonal spikes, and that's what's causing that period pain as well. Then we have things like fibroids, which are non-cancerous growths or lumps in our muscles, and they affect the uterus, and then those uterine muscles contract and sort of spike these pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. Pelvic inflammatory disease, this occurs from an infection from the vagina, and that goes into the upper reproductive organs. So again, really important that we get something like pelvic inflammatory disease ruled out when there is any period pain. And then there's cervical stenosis, which is a very rare condition, but it's basically the cervix is very small and narrow, and it slows menstrual fluid, and this increases the pain inside the uterus. So all really important things to find out whether you have and when there is period pain on the scene. And essentially, to put it in a nutshell, what exactly is happening with period pain? You got to think about it. Our uterus is a muscle. So you think about when you get a muscle cramp in your calf or, in your toes, the amount of pain that you get from that is actually quite bad. Well, essentially, that's what's happening in our uterus. It's cramping up. And then essentially what it happens is when we are cramping, we get this natural response of those prostaglandins. As I mentioned, that's a natural response to any cramping. And then this creates a cascade of more inflammation and more muscle contraction. So that's in a nutshell what is happening with your period pain, but we definitely want to be finding out the reasons behind it because it is not normal. As I mentioned, primary dysmenorrhea or primary period pain is often there's not an underlying condition there if it started from early on, but if you have new period pain that's come out, definitely you want to be getting that checked and find out the underlying cause for that one. So here are just 5 simple things that you can do to manage your period pain. Okay, so really important we go through these ones. So first and foremost is apply heat. So you think about when you get a cramp in your calf or a cramp in your toe, when you rub it and you start sort of warming up the muscle, it naturally like relaxes. So having a beautiful hot water bottle or nice warm bath with magnesium flakes, beautiful essential oils, this helps to relax the muscles and helps that stopping that contraction and rather relaxing of the muscle. So apply heat wherever possible. Rest. Now that might sound like, really, Sarah, you're putting rest as a way to manage period pain, but actually it's quite significant. I was chatting with a client the other day who struggles with really bad period pain, and she said, I listened to you, Sarah, and I just rested. And yes, the period pain was manageable. She still had it, but it was definitely more manageable because she wasn't feeling forced to go out and socialize or go grocery shopping or whatever it is. She allowed her body to totally rest because essentially that's what we should be doing during our period, especially the first couple of days. We're losing a lot of energy and a lot of blood. So rest, fantastic. More bed rest, less time running around. And another really important thing to mention is you want to, avoid tight fitting clothing around this time. Anything that you have to squeeze your body into, during your period is like a no-go. Just wear the tracksuit pants or wear dresses or, just nothing tight fitted because it also will, compress the organs and also stop that natural blood flow around the uterus. So rest and no tight fitting clothing. Number 3, really simple tip, but sip on herbal teas. Herbal teas are fantastic because they're very accessible. You could go to any health food shop, really, and have access to most of these herbal teas that I've written here. Even turmeric. You can go down to a cafe now and get a turmeric latte. So they're all amazing herbs that we have at our disposal that are uterine relaxants and natural analgesics as well. Turmeric is a potent anti-inflammatory. So having a beautiful turmeric latte instead of a coffee would be a beautiful way that you can support the period pain. Raspberry leaf, calendula, ginger, they're all beautiful herbs that I have in my Moontime tea that are specific for helping to really relax the uterine muscles. Gentle stretching. So things like that cat-cow pose, child's pose, having your legs up the wall, when you think about it, we want to be in that fetal position when we've got those cramps. And whilst that is good, also stretching out the muscles and stretching out the body is actually a nice way of relaxing it as well. And sort of, again, encouraging blood flow to the area, which is really important. I said here as well, using beautiful essential oils, things like clary, sage, wintergreen, lavender, ginger and peppermint. These are all pain relieving oils, and they can all be used either in a beautiful bath or even topically with a carrier oil. Now, another really important thing to mention, and I wanted to say here, is I definitely recommend my clients avoid using tampons. Even be cautious with menstrual cups. When it comes to period pain, if it's really bad, because essentially what that is it's not allowing the natural flow of the blood. You're like putting a plug up essentially, and it can create retrograde bleeding. So I definitely recommend things like organic pads, sanitary pads, or my favorite thing I recommend is period underwear. And again, making sure that it's a nice natural source, like Moody Booty. It's a fantastic brand that uses natural fibers. But look at that, because that's a huge thing. When I often find with my clients, when they're using tampons and they get rid of it, their period pain already significantly reduces, because you're allowing that natural blood flow that should occur at that time as well. So not too much difficulty in any of these things. Definitely in all of the things I'm going to say today is you definitely want to look at the underlying cause, but in the interim, these are beautiful, easy steps that you can do to support yourself when you do have that period pain. Let's move across now to the next one. What's the next sign from what's the next text message from our hormones is irregular periods. So irregular cycles are essentially anovulatory cycles. So if you haven't heard me say this, hear it now. Essentially, ovulation is the main event when it comes to the menstrual cycle. It is what our body naturally wants us to do, and it's a sign that we're healthy. It's a sign that we have a good metabolism. It's a sign that our nervous system's functioning appropriately. That's ovulation. So an irregular cycle is often linked to an anovulatory cycle, or a cycle that's not ovulating. So technically, from a technical point of view, an irregular cycle would be, anywhere between 21 to 38 days, but that is huge. So I would say anywhere from 26 to 32 days. If your cycle doesn't fit inside that, I would say that that's an irregular period or an irregular cycle. So what are some of the signs, or what are some of the things that this irregular period might be telling you? What's your hormones telling you with this sign of an irregular period? Number one would be a thyroid imbalance. So we need healthy metabolism and healthy thyroid function to ovulate. If that's not happening, then we're going to have irregular periods. PCOS, again, massive indication into or sign that you have when it comes to irregular periods. Lifestyle factors, things like over-exercising and under-eating. I'll talk about these in the next slide, about how we can support ourselves, but essentially this comes back to that survival mechanism. If we're over-exercising and under-eating, we're essentially telling our body we're in survival mode, and it's not safe to have a regular period. Certain medications, things like the oral contraceptive pill, antidepressants, these all suppress ovulation. And as I mentioned, often anovulatory cycles mean irregular cycles. And then stress. Number one, second to thyroid, or really, in fact, encompassing it all, is stress. Because as I mentioned, your body will not allow you to bring a baby into the world. So it won't allow you to ovulate. And so you won't be able to have an irregular period if your body is feeling stressed or feeling some sort of threat that is happening. And I wanted to mention as well, when it comes to stress, we often think, maybe it's like, oh, I have stress at work, or there's home stress or whatever. But I'm also talking here about like infections or, long-term underlying stress that, when we don't feel anymore. But they're all sorts of stress that our body will release these cortisol and those the stress hormones. So it's not just necessarily like our circumstantial stress, but also other things that could be happening in our body, like, an infection or a gut dysbiosis as well. So what can we do to start supporting or start regulating our cycle? So stress management, number one thing, this is essential, okay? So survival mode, like I've mentioned already, if our body is in survival mode, we will not ovulate, and then it's very difficult to have a regular cycle when we're not ovulating. So what can we do for stress management? First and foremost, identify our sources of stress, do beautiful things like breathing exercises, self-care, baths, and more importantly, really working at your priorities and trying to have more time, and especially to honor your cycle as well. So do whatever you can to have that time when you are having your period off, or less amount of socializing as possible, just to really limit the stress that you're putting on your body as well. Exercise in moderation. So exercise is fantastic. I love exercising, of course, but essentially if our body is already in a very hyper stressed state, exercise is almost reinforcing that. It can, especially when I say exercise, I'm talking more about strenuous exercise. So, high intensity cardio or, jogging or running, things like that. It can create a bit of a stressed situation for the body. And if we're under eating as well, along with not exercising too much and under eating, this is one of the most common causes of a lot of women's health issues, is that they're not giving their body enough nutrients and to feel safe, essentially, to bring a baby into the world and to ovulate. So your body will almost shut down and say, well, I'm clearly in survival mode. I'm not going to have a healthy cycle. So eating enough, it sounds interesting, but making sure that you're meeting your macros, or, getting enough fat, getting enough protein and enough carbohydrates, and really in our diet today, we're so obsessed with, looking our best that sometimes we can sort of not eat enough or not eat enough of the right things as well for a healthy cycle. Now, another really important one is actually establishing a routine. So why do I say that? Well, essentially our body loves rhythms, they love cycles, they love routine. We have the circadian rhythm, which is our 24-hour clock. We have, our menstrual cycle, which is a, 28-day sort of cycle. So the body has natural cycles that it loves to do. And so if we don't have a regular period, we can start doing little things to help the body to get into a bit of a cycle. So, eating at the same time every day, going to bed at the same time every day. Simple things like that helps your body to understand, well, I don't need to have a guessing game. I know I'm going to get fed at this time. I know I'm going to sleep at this time. So it sort of takes an extra load of stress off the body, and it allows it to get into a nice pattern and feel safe to then be able to go into a regular cycle as well. And then again, you'll probably see that this is going to be across the board, but looking into your thyroid health. As I mentioned before, that's a huge one. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but essentially we don't get enough information about our thyroid from the doctors. It's just normally TSH that's checked, but TSH is not enough. So definitely we want to find out a healthy thyroid function, because when we have a healthy thyroid function, we have a healthy metabolism, and it's a really great sign that the body is not in survival mode. So 5 simple things that you can start doing now to regulate your cycle while you look at the underlying reasons as to why it might be irregular. Let's talk about the next one, which is mood swings. So no, they're not normal, all right? I was looking at something on social media the other day, and one of the girls, an influencer was saying, it's normal to have swings in moods. And whilst it is to some degree normal, you can't be high and happy all the time. If you know your seasons and your cycle, you can understand a little bit more why some days you do feel, a little bit down. But in general, mood swings, significant spikes and drops in mood is not normal. It is definitely a sign or a text message from your body that things aren't happy, things aren't balanced. There's something going on there. And so when I am talking about mood swings, I am talking about like sudden and unexpected changes in mood. It's sort of not like, oh, okay, you had a fight with your partner and now you're cranky. It's unexpected, and it's sort of like things that you almost can't control. And if you are a victim of mood swings or PMS, mood changes, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's almost, consumes you and overrides, your natural mental capacity. So this is what I'm talking about when I say mood swings as well. So essentially these emotional disturbances are linked to the rise and fall in hormones, and especially estrogen throughout the menstrual cycle. So estrogen has a beautiful effect on giving us energy and also supporting a happy mood, because it raises serotonin levels, and serotonin, of course, is our happy neurotransmitter. But what happens premenstrually is that, or in our autumn season, if anyone's watched any of my previous webinars or masterclasses, essentially in our autumn season, progesterone is supposed to kick in, and progesterone has a calming, relaxing effect on the body. If we don't have enough progesterone, if we're not ovulating and we're not having a regular cycle, or just our progesterone isn't efficient, then, you know, we don't get that calming, natural, you know, nice, relaxing benefits of progesterone, and we don't also have that really happy serotonin either. So we're in this really random phase of like nullness almost of hormones, and it can really be detrimental to our health. And this is where often we find mood swings are the worst in that premenstrual autumn phase of the cycle. Yes. So what are some of the reasons, or what are some of the text messages that your hormones are trying to tell you with a mood swing? So number one, low progesterone. Okay, as I mentioned before, it should have that real calming effect on the body. If we don't have enough progesterone, then you're going to find premenstrually, particularly, your mood is really, really bad and really fluctuating. High stress levels. Of course, if we're in that aggravated fight, flight, freeze, or fawn stage, then we're going to have mood swings. Definitely, that's a big one. Maybe some underlying depression or anxiety conditions that we're not aware of. I often say this as well, premenstrually or in our autumn, it's like it's a build-up of everything from like the whole month, and then our fuse switches and we can no longer take it anymore. But the other parts of the cycle, we've had that happy, bubbly estrogen that's protected us, but now that's sort of not there anymore. And any underlying depression or anxiety conditions can sort of come to the fore around, you know, premenstrually and around autumn season as well. Neurotransmitter imbalance, as I mentioned before, serotonin, dopamine, histamine, they're all very much linked with our hormones. So definitely wanting to look at, you know, if there's any neurotransmitter imbalances happening. Gut dysbiosis, huge. Any mood issues are always linked back to our gut, because we have a vagus nerve that runs from our brain to our gut. We have more of our neurotransmitters are made in our gut than in our brain. So always we want to be looking at what the gut is doing when we have any mood issues as well. And then blood sugar drops, very common around premenstrually, around that autumn phase, that our blood sugar drops, and so we can get hangry. So definitely that's something to look at, those sort of signs, or those sort of you know, potential reasons for the mood swings that happen as well. So what can you do? What are 5 simple things you can do now to stabilize your mood? Sounds simple, and it is, but get adequate sleep. So essentially, sleep is a fundamental for health. We want to be looking at getting 7 to 8 hours a night. And essentially, especially for mental health, sleep is imperative, because it's when our brain repairs itself. It's when our brain consolidates the emotions from the day. So if we haven't allowed our brain to have that rest and repair, we're not allowing our emotions to also consolidate and clear. So that's essential. Getting, you know, 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night is, you know, it's paramount for healthy hormones, essentially. Supporting those blood sugar levels, as I mentioned before, that hangry, especially in that second part of the cycle. You might not feel like that's a contributing factor, but I'm quite positive it will be. So eating every 3 to 4 hours, having, you know, good quality protein rich meals that really can help to stabilize those blood sugar levels as well. Exercising in moderation, of course, and doing nice calming exercising, because it releases those endorphins. Journaling is a fantastic way to support mood swings, or, you know, stabilize our mood, because when we journal, we're writing, and it's activating like the left hemisphere of our brain, which is the logical part. So it helps to sort of calm the emotional response and allow that logical part of your brain to start getting activated. And it also allows you space to express your feelings. So if someone's irritating you and you can't say it to them, you can write it down, or you can sort of start to see patterns or triggers as to why, you know, you might have these mood swings at certain times of the month as well. And then, of course, self-care, because we women do everything. We're mothers, we're, you know, we're wives, we're people, we're workers, we do everything essentially. And we have, and because we're actually quite capable of doing everything, we take on everything as well. And so we don't actually have enough time for ourselves. And it might sound very simple and, you know, idealistic to do self-care, but again, it comes back to simple things like getting adequate sleep, having some, you know, a chill time at least once a week, or catch up with your friends, or, you know, go for a nice walk in nature, or whatever it is, but something that you can do just for yourself to really sort of calm your nervous system as well, and show your body that you are going to give it a little bit of love as well. Okay, now let's talk about the next message from our hormones, and that is skin breakouts. All right, so a really important thing to mention here, that period acne is different than any typical acne. Okay, so I'm not talking about, I mean, you know, normal acne will have a hormonal component too, but I'm talking about those breakouts that you get premenstrually or at different times of the cycle, and they're usually around the chin area and down in here. So that's the hormonal area of the body. And these are very much linked to, you know, the rises and the falls of the hormones. We excrete hormones mainly from our liver and our bowels. So I'll talk about that in a second, but firstly, essentially what it is the skin breakouts come from hormonal shifts throughout the month. So progesterone is actually going to create more sebum and more oil, and so does testosterone. So progesterone, remember, that comes, or it should come on strong, you know, premenstrually, and then testosterone comes on when we actually get our period. And so it's normal in some ways to get more oil at this time, but what's not normal is to have significant breakouts. And what this could be telling us, what are these signs telling us? Definitely PCOS is a big contributing factor when there's those pimple or those skin breakouts, because PCOS is linked to higher androgens. Androgens are sort of male type hormones that we women do have, but they're more, they raise our testosterone, and they also create more oil and more sebum as well. So definitely want to be looking at PCOS if you're getting regular skin breakouts. Lymphatic congestion, our lymphatic system is a really important elimination pathway, and essentially it's our skin. So if we're getting breakouts on our skin, it's a really good indication that our lymphatic system's a little bit congested. And then definitely our liver and digestion, or our liver and our gut. As I mentioned before, we excrete our hormones mainly from our liver and our bowels. So if they're sluggish, then it's going to come out through our skin, essentially. And then, of course, systemic inflammation. So really, inflammation is the cause of a lot of things. But if you've got inflammation going on, they're those sort of inflammatory hormones that are going on in the body, you're going to get significant skin breakouts as well. So they're some of the things that your skin breakouts could be telling you. Now, what are some simple things we can do to support or have glowing skin for the whole cycle? Water. Again, this might sound like, you know, simple, and it is, but we're 70% water, and we don't nearly drink enough. When we are hydrated enough with at least 2.5 litres of water a day, we're actually allowing our bodies to remain its the skin's elasticity, but it's also helping to cleanse those elimination pathways and support healthy, natural, glowing skin. So aim for at least 2 to 3 litres of water every day, and definitely filtered water. I'll be doing a big blog post on water filters shortly, because it's unfortunately Australia, in different areas of Australia as well, the water quality is terrible, and that can definitely be interrupting with our hormones as well. Exercising. If you know one thing about me, is that I'm obsessed with rebounding. All right, it's such a fantastic exercise for the lymphatic system and for our hormonal system, for our thyroid. I could do a whole masterclass just on the amazing benefits of rebounding, but essentially it's one of the greatest things for glowing complexion, because you're stimulating that lymphatic system, but you're also helping to you know, bring collagen and elasticity to the skin as well. So get on that rebounder, 15 minutes a day, and notice a significant difference with your skin. Sipping on beautiful herbal teas, again, things like calendula, nettle leaf, gotcha cola, all amazing, beautiful herbs specific for skin health. You know, Gotcha Cola is said to be like a natural Botox. Essentially, it's so great for your skin. So, you know, beautiful herbal teas. Again, you have access to these, you know, easily enough, and they're just beautiful things that can add to your water content as well. And of course, sleep. So there's nothing worse for your skin than not sleeping. You know, you'll notice that if you don't sleep 1 or 2 nights, you'll notice your skin gets congested and the breakouts can come. So definitely looking at what you're doing with your sleep. And then dry skin brushing. Again, something really simple but profound when it comes to supporting our lymphatic system. I don't recommend dry skin brushing on your face, but definitely the rest of your body. And remember that our skin is one, so it's not like our face stops here and then the rest. So even if you are dry skin brushing on your body, that will have benefits on your face as well. So that's a big one as well, definitely dry skin brushing. And I have done a huge blog post as well about eating right for glowing complexion as well. So if anyone's interested in that, you can have a look on my website, or I can add the link when I send the replay for you guys. All right, now let's talk about the last sign from our body, and that is heavy periods. So what is a heavy period? This is bleeding for more than 7 days. This is when the period blood soaks through 1 or more tampons or pads every hour, or it's when we need to change our period overnight. And sometimes if we need to double up in protection to stop us from leaking. And also if there's any blood clots in the flow that are more than 1 centimetre. That's all considered heavy period bleeding. Okay, now again, this is really important to mention because unfortunately this is probably a very common one, and a lot of women aren't aware what is considered heavy period bleeding, but also they just think it's a natural part. But it is most definitely a huge sign from the body that things aren't right, and a really important one to get checked, you know, quite soon, because you know, we want to look at the underlying reason. And again, having heavy period bleeding can also lead to like things like mineral and nutrient deficiencies like iron as well, because you're losing so much blood. And again, one of the major reasons is not ovulating. And when we don't ovulate, again, like I mentioned, we don't produce progesterone, and progesterone thins the uterine lining. So not ovulating is a big one. And then of course, high estrogen is another really big reason for having heavy periods, because estrogen makes the uterine lining thicker. All right, so then you're having more of that sort of coming out through the bleed. Now, number 1, thyroid. If there's heavy menstrual bleeding, there is most definitely or most probably a thyroid imbalance happening. That's number 1 most important thing to check out. Endometriosis, again, very common that we have heavy periods when there has endometriosis. As I mentioned before, high estrogen. High estrogen will also be linked to the next one, which is uterine fibroids. So think about estrogen as like the growth hormone, you know, and so when we have a lot of estrogen, then we get growths, uterine growths, and then it creates like this environment that's prolific for, you know, heavy menstrual bleeding as well. And believe it or not, low iron is another reason or another cause for heavy periods as well, because when we don't have enough iron, we bleed even more, you know, as counterintuitive as that sounds, but definitely looking at what your iron levels are doing to find out as if that's a reason for the heavy periods. So is it possible to lighten your periods? Yes. Short answer is yes. Okay, another one, I've mentioned this multiple times, but sipping on beautiful herbal teas. My Moontime tea that I have is fantastic because it has things like ladies' mantle and calendula. They're both specific for lightening a heavy menstrual bleed. They're astringent in nature, so they sort of really help to lighten up a heavy menstrual bleed. And then also beautiful herbal teas like nettle leaf, again, really rich in iron, and fantastic just to support like holistic and whole body health. I've mentioned this a number of times now as well, but using pads or period underwear rather than tampons or menstrual cups even. I mean, menstrual cups aren't as bad as tampons, but definitely avoiding tampons because you're not allowing that natural flow. And so you'll probably find that you get more clots when you use tampons as well. Again, rest. Rest. Again, I just think this is just something that we just simply don't do, especially as women. We get our period and it's like, I was looking at something the other day and it says, don't let your period stop you. I think that was the advertisement for some, tampon ad or something. I just thought to myself, well, how sad that is, that we feel that, we have to keep soldiering on when we have our period, when traditionally it's a time that we are supposed to just rest. It's a time that we're losing a lot of nutrients and we're losing a lot of blood, and it's a cleansing period. So, I know that that's not always possible. You might have kids or you're working, and, but whatever you can do around that first day or first couple of days of your period, definitely try to use that time as, as intentionally as you can. Maybe cancel your catch up with your friends, or just let them know you have your period, and they should understand. But definitely having more rest, really important way to manage as well the heavier periods. And gentle exercises to help sort of stagnant blood congestion, that's again beautiful ones. So things like those cat and cow poses that I mentioned before, or the child's pose. And one of the best for heavy periods is having your legs up against the wall as well. Really good way of supporting that. And then definitely, as I mentioned, getting those hormones tested. So heavy periods, you always want to be getting your estrogen levels tested, thyroid, full thyroid panel. This is really important to mention here. When I say full thyroid panel, this means TSH, T4, T3, and thyroid antibodies, because TSH is it's not enough at all. And the other ones are sort of telling us what is actually happening with your thyroid. And then, of course, getting your ferritin levels tested as well, really important to see what they're doing. So they're the 5 signs from your body that we're getting every month, that we are getting little text messages from our body or from our hormones about our health. So what does listening to your periods help? It helps you to learn when your hormones are out of balance. It helps you to know how your thyroid and your metabolic health is functioning. It helps you to leverage increased energy and work with it. And it also creates emotional wellness. So if you can learn to listen to your period signs, so okay, well, last month I didn't have pain, but this month I do. What happened last month? What happened in this last cycle? Did I not allow enough rest? Did I drink too much coffee and alcohol? Actually understanding why you're getting these symptoms. And then this actually creates a sense of like emotional wellness, because you feel a bit more in control of your life and a bit more in control of your hormones as well. One of the best things you can do to learn more about your cycle and learn more about your health is tracking your cycle. Okay, so this is something I get all of my clients to do. It's one of the most essential tools for understanding your cycle. I definitely recommend the temp drop. That sort of takes the guesswork out of it, especially if you're not getting consistent sleep. You just wear the device overnight and it tracks your temperature. And if you want, they're having a big sale at the moment as well, temp drop. So if you want the link, I can send you a bit of a discount link as well for that. Yeah, so that's definitely, but cycle tracking, and you can just do it with an oral thermometer too, if that's what you prefer. But the temp drop just sort of takes the guesswork out of it, and it just happens automatically and syncs to your phone. All right, so let's just talk about this last one, and that is how much I love to support women with their health. And I really feel that it's really important to not put up with your symptoms any longer. Really important to start listening to your body. I hear a lot of my clients say, their period symptoms are only once a month, so they sometimes ignore it or they just, dismiss it. But as we've learned today, it's actually big insights into what's happening, in our health. So we don't want to be ignoring the text messages. Otherwise, they're going to get so loud that eventually you're forced to deal with it. So remember that prevention is better than cure. So looking at all these signs and symptoms now and learning to understand your cycle is really important. So your period, I like to say, is just like a messenger, but the final, and the final boss is whatever is caused by your hormonal imbalance. So basically, like I mentioned, these symptoms are more or less just messages from your body. And what we want to find out is, what are these messages really saying, and what is the actual cause? And so that's why it's really important to get the testing done and look at, booking a consultation to find out like your real underlying causes of these sort of hormonal imbalances as well. So a lot of you already are clients, so you know how to touch base with me. Otherwise, feel free to jump onto my website, sarahemilyherbalist.com, and we can definitely touch base and book something in for you if you feel like you need some extra support with your hormones. At the moment, I'm all online consultations, but that hopefully will, in Sydney, I'm going to get a clinic space in the next sort of few months. So stay tuned for that. But in the interim, definitely it's all online at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll stop the share now, and then we can have our little Q&A session if anyone's got any questions. Good. All right. So I'll open up the floor to you lovely one. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Bonnie.
Sarah,